All right, so then if you're ready to go, we can begin this episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast, and Now You Don't, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
"O my queen," said the royal sorcerer to Hatshepsut, "with this amulet, you and your descendants are endowed by the goddess Isis with the powers of the animals and the elements. You will soar as the falcon soars, run with the speed of gazelles, and command the elements of sky and earth." 3,000 years later, a young science teacher dug up this lost treasure and found she was heir to the secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Rennie Carroll, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice.
They must be experimenting with it. They can't control the weather without the whole machine. They sure can cause a lot of trouble and damage.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast. It's your old mentor here, John S. Drew, and we're coming to the end of our look at those television shows we've loved since the 70s. Even as kids, we loved it, and now as adults, we still love it, and we've been watching them, and we've been talking about them here on the podcast, those shows being Shazam and The Secrets of Isis. And joining me, as he's been since the very beginning, is our own Big Red Cheese himself, Mr. Richard F. Lee. Hey, Richard.
Well, hello, Dr. Principal John. Have you taken over for Dr. Barnes yet by this last? Yeah.
Now, there's something. Dr. Barnes. We didn't get a Dr. Barnes for this two-parter at the end. That's a shame.
Yeah, that is a shame. I noticed that he was notably missing, and what makes his character so special in this entire run of the Secrets of Isis episodes, he either was on screen or he was mentioned off screen. It's though he were a recurring character, and it's too bad that he wasn't seen a little more often because he was an interesting character. He actually led all the others here. And as we've seen in the last episode, now we're seeing in this episode, there's so many characters that I don't know if there would have been any room for Dr. Barnes to even put in a cameo.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's a shame. Folks, we're going to be talking about the episode and Now You Don't here today. We've got a few things, too, we're also going to be doing here in the episode, including reading some feedback from one of our listeners here who did respond to our call for, comments on the show itself. But let's get into it here, Richard. Let's talk about this episode.
This episode is entitled And Now You Don't, which was a perfect fit for the prior episode entitled Now You See It.
Yep.
And it's obviously meant to be a two-part episode. I don't remember now if it ever said tune in next week for The Secrets of Isis for part 2. I think when we last left off, it stopped and ended with something very solemn, the thunder that was in the air.
That was it.
Because the bad guys got away with the weather control device.
Yeah.
And now we're launching right into this new episode. And what I appreciate about this is a little different. There's no recap here.
There never was, though. And with the Shazam two-parters, we didn't have it either.
We didn't have a recap. Now, the obvious reason why they did not bother with a recap is because it would have taken up too much time. And this is only with commercials, maybe a 20-minute episode or 22-minute episode, having to take into consideration the commercial breaks. So it was assumed that anybody who saw the show, was a fan of the show, saw the prior episode, knew what was going on. Now, contrast that with the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman.
I'm sorry. You telling me that I bring up Bionic Man and 6 Million, you do it too.
I can't help it. I love Lee Majors and Lindsay Wagner, okay? They've been my heroes from the start, even around the same time as these shows premiered. See, they were my primetime superheroes, whereas Shazam and Isis were my Saturday morning superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
But those shows, whenever they had two-parters, as you recall, they always had recaps that lasted a good couple of minutes long.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. And they're all preserved on the DVDs. And part of me said, I know that they did not obviously have DVDs in those days, and so they had to do the recaps to remind the audience of what happened the week before, and maybe for the benefit of people who never saw the prior episode. But again, it assumes your audience is kind of dumb. It does. It assumes you don't remember what happened last week.
Yeah.
ISIS, this episode, it launches right into it, and it does not give you a recap. You're expected to know what happened last week. And in a way, I find that refreshing. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I saw this episode when it first aired in 1976. I saw it right back then. It aired the following week after that first episode, Now You See It. And I remembered what happened the week before. I didn't have to have a recap. And as the opening scene, you're given who it's directed by, Arthur Nadell again, and we see the weather machine and hear the crackling thunder as the villains are spotted playing with it.
Yeah.
Now, I like this. It launches right into it. It goes right into the end of the story. It doesn't waste any time. Mm-hmm. It gets to the point.
Would you remember in the old Batman TV series, the first season and a good chunk of the second season, they used to do a full-length recap of what happened the night before, and the producers discovered that a lot of people weren't watching the first night because I could just watch the recap and then follow the rest of the story on Thursday night, because the ratings were always better on Thursday than they were on Wednesday. So what happened was that into the second season, what they did instead was they would just show you Batman and Robin in the death trap, and then, the worst is yet to come, and then boom, off we went. You had to watch the first part to know how they got into that predicament.
But wait, the worst is yet to come.
Yep.
He was a great announcer, wasn't he?
He was. He absolutely was.
Now, we don't have any of that for the Secrets of ISIS. In all fairness, the Secrets of ISIS was not played for laughs.
Not like, there were moments that they were doing something for the laugh that was fun, but it wasn't a comedy show.
No, it was not a comedy show. They played it straight. There's humor in the story, but it wasn't an absurd theater of the absurd. Adam West called Batman theater of the absurd.
Yeah.
And he started getting too many winks to the camera by the time he got to the third season.
Oh, yeah. I've always said that. He wanted to be in on the joke and not be the joke anymore.
Yeah. And even though superhero stuff is hard to do, it really is, because you're trying to play a fantasy character and play it straight. I think that with the Secrets of ISIS and Shazam 2, they did a great job so far. Going into this episode, you have these characters who are obviously setting themselves up for a spin-off TV show. Mm-hmm. They're having fun while they're doing it, but at the same time, they're not taking it as a joke. They're playing it straight. Yeah. And I think that that's the strength of the acting launching into this episode. Now You Don't. They're starting off pretty strong, and just in the opening seconds now. You're not even establishing what happened before. They launch right into it. They don't have time to recap anything, and they're just going right to the point. Now they go to you start right away seeing the villain that we know as the Professor.
That's true. And
now you see the villain that you didn't see before. And the Professor wants complete control, and he needs Rick Mason's plans that the government preferred over the Professor's, and Rick Mason is going to pay for it. I don't quite get that. Now again, I don't mean to do this on purpose. Maybe I am. I don't know. It's maybe subconscious. But you see this later in the $6 Million Man show. We keep going back to that show because a part of me thinks that maybe they did it intuitively. Maybe they copied it. I don't believe that they would copy a kid's Saturday morning show. But you've seen this. A jealous scientist whose plans and inventions are turned down because the OSI wants to borrow from Rudy Wells, a better invention, the bionics or whatever it is. And the scientist who's miffed wants revenge, and he wants them to pay. you got a mirror of that in this little episode of the season of The Secrets of ISIS, which is, of course, the season finale and the series finale at the same time. Is this a trope in science fiction? And I've been a sci-fi fan my whole life. I've never seen this played out very much in other shows. Not much.
Right. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, because we talk about tropes all the time that we're familiar with, and we see whether it's tropes throughout this show or tropes throughout 70s television in general. That I can't tell you.
Yeah, but there's a vengeance element. And you got to admit, though, for a children's show, that's pretty strong stuff here.
That's true. Yes, absolutely. It is. Maybe that has something to do with the moral at the end, which we're still trying to figure out here. But let's
Well, I got it. Before we get too far, I have to tell our listening audience once again, for the final time, I have to have my Shazam and ISIS Mego action figures to help guide me through this. They give me the confidence that I need to be able to get through a podcast with intelligence and poise.
There you go. Oh, if only they could see what you're doing with them, though. Hello.
Hey. All right, you two, knock it off. Robin Boy Wonder's watching.
Now, meanwhile, while all this is going on, though, our gang is celebrating Rick's release with a cake. And this cake has everything he needs to escape from jail should he ever have to go back, which is a nice little touch.
That is cute. That's nice. And see, that's an example of humor without gags.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That is an example. That's a perfect way to use a touch of humor in a show that's played straight. It's not an obvious farce. You can be funny without being totally silly.
Yep.
And that's where Batman 66 started to fall apart. They got too silly. Mm-hmm. They got a little too comical. Here, you never have that with The Secrets of ISIS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, as they're celebrating, thunder rumbles off in the distance, and Rick knows that there's some experimenting going on. He comments once again, they do not have control, but they can cause trouble with this device. Yes.
Now, I got to admit, this is the fastest legal exoneration I've ever seen in my life. Now, there had been something else going on here. Did ISIS go down to the DA's office and say, look, Rick Mason did not do any of this. Here's exculpatory evidence, and they decided to drop the charges and exonerate the bail? That's pretty fast. That just doesn't happen in real life. Okay. So now with the thunder going on, the thunder hits at the exact time. After the comic trope with the cake is done, now the thunder strikes.
It's another one of those weird storms.
Oh, this weather has me worried.
You mean the device?
They must be experimenting with it. They can't control the weather without the whole machine. But they sure can cause a lot of trouble and damage.
Well, it's up to the police now. See you all later.
Stay out of jail.
I will. Hey, thank you.
We still have a stake in this.
Yeah, for sure. What are we gonna do?
I have an idea how we might find those guys.
How?
We'll make them come to us.
So next now we see Ranji goof off by levitating Feather's hat. Now, how does he do this? Is he, now, I think this is left vague on purpose. Is he a mere illusionist, or does he really have magical powers? That's deliberately vague. And as I said last time in the last podcast, had they launched into their own Super Sleuth spin-off TV series, I don't think we would have got an answer. I think, if anything, in order to keep the show interesting, they would have shown him do real supernatural things. He would not have been a mere illusionist. But anyway, Ranji has a plan to make the villains come to them. Now, I like that little mark of that. I like that part of that little demarcation in this part of the episode. Make the villains come to you. You don't go out to look for them. Mm-hmm. Now, CJ knows that the villains don't know, that they don't really have the plans to Operation Weathermaker, but he can get them to believe it. Okay? Now, the professor gets the stereotypical word on the street that these kids have the plans with the Weathermaker device, and Feather makes an arrangement to meet them. Now, you're going to hear that term, the word on the street. I had to laugh when I watched it again, John. I had to laugh at that because that is a labor-saving device, and it's a lazy form of writing. Because you have to get the main villains to meet with these group of kids somehow.
Right.
Because assumingly this is a large city, maybe Los Angeles, you don't know who stole this thing or how to find them. That would take months to find out probably. But word on the street has it.
Word on the street. But see, this goes back to what I was saying in the last episode. Each of these kids have a certain skill set. Ranji's got his magic, and his ability to sing, I guess, is also that. And then you've got Feather, who is our street guy, so he makes the deals. He wheels and deals. In fact, he's the one who makes the arrangements for them to meet with the professor.
This is great. It's a time-saving device to tell a story, and you're not supposed to think about it. Just flow with it, okay? Does anybody remember Police Squad with Leslie Nielsen?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Because they had only had 6 episodes. The Zucker brothers put it together, and I rewatched all 6 episodes recently, along with the Naked Gun films. Now, there was a character in each episode of Police Squad, Johnny the Shoeshine Guy. And so Leslie Nielsen, as Detective Drebin, would go to the shoeshine place and says, word on the street has it that there's something going on. And he would say, how would I know? That he passed him some money, that he knows everything. And he knew everything. And in that type of trope, I think what they were doing was making fun of that trope that existed in other movies and TV shows, that there's somebody who knows something to get you from one place to another, that all you had to do is find out information, the word on the street. And so if I'm writing a play, I'm going to have to avoid ever using that as a line, because it gives myself away as a lazy writer. You're not trying to set up something. You're just trying to show that you can get your plot point to move from point A to point B by saying that the characters in your story got it from a word on the street. But now, interestingly, I got to point this in. We'll get back to the episode, but Kolchak the Night Stalker tried the same thing.
Yes.
There was one character they never reused called the Monk. He appeared in one episode called the Zombie, the Monk. And Kolchak would go up to him and get information from him about something, and he would pay him. So that's how he was able to get around the plot and find out who was responsible for what.
Right.
And so the Secrets of ISIS, in a way, does it in a clever manner, where you have this established new character who is a street guy of some kind, Feather, and he's able to mingle on the streets and find out information, and the bad guys somehow hear it from him, and it's reduced to word on the street has it, and such and such.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We've got one more character, and we haven't seen him do anything spectacular yet. CJ, anything. In fact, we haven't seen him. He really didn't play much of a part in part 1, but part 2 now he's about to, shine in this of sorts here. We'll get to this here.
Yes.
So in fact, it's, they make the plans. They're going to meet at this warehouse. And it's, and I think if I remember correctly, they even said it's an abandoned one. CJ has Rennie on standby. She's going to be the one who, if they need to call the cops in, they can call the cops in. He's outside with the walkie-talkie or the CB radio watching what's going on as Ranji and Feather go into the building itself. Now, meanwhile, we cut to Rick, and he's showing off his new CB. Now, here we go, 70s. We're all into... How is it we wait till the last episode before we get into CBs here? I'm assuming the RV that was what they had there, was a CB. No, they picked up a phone, didn't they?
They sure did. They had a cell phone.
They had a cell phone.
And so Rick Mason shows off his new CB to Andrea. What are you trying to do, impress her? Hey, check this out. But Neil and Mentor have a phone in their RV.
But while he's showing it off, they manage to pick up Rennie's transmissions as she's talking to CJ. And since the signal is strong, they know that the kids aren't too far away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, this could not work today. I think about how modern technology has changed how plot points would have worked in 70s TV shows. We have cell phones, smartphones, GPS tracking devices. You can find out anything and everything about anybody at once.
Mm-hmm.
Back in those days, man, you had to pull off to the side of the road to use a payphone. And we're going to see that in this episode, too. And likewise, CB radios. The technology is really slow for the time, but when we were there who lived through this, we understood it.
Right. Yeah, well, I had a CB as a kid.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I had a kid's version of a CB radio. It was in the shape of a SWAT truck.
Oh, great. Hey, I had my Mego Star Trek communicators. I thought I was high tech. Except nobody understood me when I said Kirk to Enterprise. Some guy picked up on Channel 14. You're on the line, kid. Get off. So, meantime, the gang in the van go off, and they're going to. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to get into a building. And they set up some kind of meeting here. They're going to go into a building and snoop around.
Right.
So what's happening here? They're talking on their CB radio. They're walkie-talkies, actually. They're not talking on a CB radio from a car. They're talking walkie-talkies.
Right. Setting
up plans to go inside of a building, once again planning on committing trespass. It's fortuitous and convenient that Rick Mason just happens to have a CB radio.
Yeah, I agree.
And they can cut in on Rennie's transmission. So in the meantime, what happens is Feather and CJ go into this building, and they get inside, and coincidentally at the same time, Rick and Andrea happen to be playing on the CB, and they're hearing Rennie talking. And they're hearing some problems go on because CJ starts telling Rennie that, hey, something's going wrong. There's smoke coming out of the building, when in reality what happens is Feather slips off the ladder as he's inside, and he causes an electrical fire.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, this guy's clumsy, man. So now Rick and Andrea are on their way to try to do something about it. And now he's stuck in the building, causing this electrical fire. And did you notice that the sparks and things that shoot out are identical to what you saw in that one second season Shazam episode, the one with Danny Bonaducci? It's the same special effect.
Yep.
Once the electrical thing starts up. But anyhow, with the ladder coming down, there's a flurry of sparks, right?
Right.
Now, Kenneth Johnson, I like Kenneth Johnson, who invented the Bionic Woman and co-produced a $6 Million Man. His solution was, for every action scene, create a flurry of sparks.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Oh, sure. And then of course they ran with it on both shows even after Kenny was gone.
Oh, gee. I think the Secrets of Isis had the flurry of sparks thing going first. That's what I kind of believe that. Now, CJ does not stand around. He uses a stereotypical cliched slow motion karate kung fu kick. Or it's kung fu, it's not karate. He uses a kung fu kick to kick in the door, waka, and get inside. I thought that was great. I like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and so Rick shows up to put a stop to it. He breaks in the door, but a lot of good that's going to do.
Yeah, but where did that come from with CJ? We saw none of that in the first part of this thing. CJ was all quiet in the background. Now all of a sudden it's like there's a door. What do I do? I mean, it's the most like you said, stereotypical cliche. Oh God. I cringed. I mean, at the end, it's like, okay, so I guess, he's our guy for some brute strength sometimes of sorts.
And he's wearing bib overalls. So help me God, blue jean bib overalls.
Well, we'll get into that in the fashion statement. I got a comment about that.
Oh, gee. So,
Andrea, wait here.
Mr. Mason! Stay right there.
Oh, mighty Isis.
She passes through the ceiling. Now, this is the third time she passed through walls, and without a spell. She doesn't even say any words to get through the ceiling.
Nope.
And then the electrical, now with using a spell, she stops that electrical storm, and she makes the iron fence disappear. Now, this time around, she wants them to have a talk with the police. No more Miss Nice Gal like the last episode.
Yeah.
Electric forces spinning round. Return safely to the ground. Oh, iron fence, please let me through. And now, I think you'd all better have a talk with the police.
But it's interesting, though, because, they're at the police station and they're promising they're going to behave. But our inspector there wants to have Feather set up another meeting. This time, though, Rick's going to be the one going to the meeting. And I love the look on Brian's face as they end the scene with him.
At the zoom, the stereotypical 1970s zoom right up to his face, and that ends Act 1.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. Now we get to Act 2, and there you go again.
Get the plans?
Maybe something better.
What could that be?
Rick Mason. Word on the street is that he wants to deal with us.
Mason? What could he be up to?
And while the word is out on the street, we also get more karate stuff from CJ as he breaks a leg on some prop because he's trying to saw it, and he's looking at it like, where do I saw? How do I saw it clean? He's got this confused look, and he's like, I'll just use my atomic arm. I mean, what is? See, there you go. There's the Mego doll. You would have the Mego doll would have CJ with a arm that snaps back, snaps forward. You could put it in position and then boom.
Yeah. Now the funny thing is, I have a feeling that if Super Sleuths went to series, Mego would not get the license. I think Mattel would get the license. You would end up having the CJ figure with a karate chop arm and hanging out with Big Jim. So now what happens is Ranji resumes his rehearsal of the magic act and does a levitation trick with Renee Carroll. Feather interrupts him to tell him that he's arranged a meeting with the crooks. He's really talented. That is his superpower.
Yes.
How does he do that? Does he have a telephone number? Oh. Why doesn't he just give that to the police so they can trace the call? Oh, well, whatever.
And where did the name Feather come from?
We never would have learned it, I don't think, even if the show was on. You have to have some cool-sounding names, character names that stand out.
For a street kid? Yo, that's Feather. Word on the street is he's tough.
Word on the street is at least all right. So now they all flee, and as they leave, Renee Carroll turns around to see that the table she was just on fall to the ground. Now, Ranji did this cool levitation trick where he takes out the legs underneath this table supporting her, and she apparently is levitating.
Yes.
Now, I've seen magic acts and illusion acts. Those are illusions. There's a trick to it. Here, she gets off of that table, and they all leave to do this assignment. She turns around and she sees that the table hits the ground. And that's to leave the impression to the audience that Ranji's a real magician. He's got magic powers.
Yeah.
That's not just an illusion. It's not an illusion. It's really happening.
Yep. Now, before, they can go through with their plans to meet up with the bad guys actually surprise them. Rick and Ranji are in the van, and our bad guys are in there as well, and they order Ranji to drive the car. No, they're not in the van. They're actually in Rick's car, right?
It looked like a van to me.
It was Ranji's van. Okay, so Ranji's van also has a CD as well, because as they're driving, Ranji is able to, for a moment, distract the two bad guys while he goes and grabs the microphone and turns it on so that anybody can listen to them as they're being taken away by the bad guys, which I did like. So, but this is funny because Andrea's following in Rick's car with the kids. They stop for a moment so Andrea can call the cops. And as she's calling, Rennie realizes that the signal's getting weaker, so they're getting farther away. So they just take off in Rick's car, leaving Andrea behind. But you got to admit, it's probably one of the more convenient things for her, rather than the usual, her having to make an excuse to run off and change. They just blow her off.
Oh, mighty Isis. This is going to take some teamwork. O mighty winds which blow on high, lift my voice into the sky. Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel, follow my voice. Captain Marvel, follow my voice, Captain Marvel.
That's Isis' voice. She must need help.
Yeah, but okay, John, before we even get to that, Andrea Thomas is feeding swans in a pond. What's she doing feeding swans in a pond?
Why not?
Well, she's throwing stuff to them. You don't know what she's doing. She shouldn't be throwing bread because that'll make them sick. Whatever.
We didn't know that in the 70s. We drank out of the fire hose. So come on.
She's not using Tut this time.
Nope.
And she finds Captain Marvel. He's played with a stick.
He's clearing brush. That's what he's doing. That's what I'm going to say. He's clearing brush again.
I don't understand. I don't get this. They couldn't have splurged and have the RV in an insert shot with Mentor and Billy.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
ISIS is calling us again or something like that. That would have been nice, rather than just throw Captain Marvel in there without having no reason to be there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Just wandering around with a stick.
Yeah. Where's Mentor and the motorhome? Oh. So now the next scene shows us Rick Mason finally meets the professor.
We meet again, Mason. Professor. So you're the one. Now then, I need the other half of this machine. With your knowledge, we can build it together, gentlemen.
And then
I did like that. I did like that whole thing there, but I just thought it was still funny when he's like, "Oh, Professor." It's like, it's like, "Oh, Doctor." Doctor Who. Oh, it's the Doctor, and there's the Master. Names, please, people.
You may have taught high school chemistry, but I want the secrets to the weather device. So Captain Marvel and Isis meet up in flight.
Yes,
and I actually like the flying sequences here. I think they did a good job with it. How they managed to get the appearance of Captain Marvel flying off. That was neat.
I liked that. I had to wonder though. I'm assuming they were flown separately, and then they were flying in separate times, and then it was just sort of brought together. Here's the slide with Isis. Here's the slide with Captain Marvel. And yet, despite that, they lined it up just right that it looks like the two of them are really looking at each other.
Yeah, I think they did a good job with that. I do think they were shot separately.
Yeah.
And it's good compositing. They did a good job. The compositing is actually very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the thing is, CJ, Feather, and Rennie arrive where, the bad guys are and everything. They see that, Rick and Ranji are there. And so they're like, we got to do something. We got to make it look like we're surrounding them and such. So it's just this crazy thing, because then CJ comes out and he's like, hiya, hiya. And he's kind of like, gesturing, but he never connects or anything. He's just gesturing. And then, of course, Feather comes running around and stuff. And it sends, Sam and his companion, they're chasing after them as the professor, grabs the device and runs.
Randy, I'll get the professor.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, takes off in a helicopter.
Yeah. And who chases after him? Rick gets to be a hero.
Yeah, he tries to be he wants to go after his weather device here.
Yep.
Now, he climbs on board this helicopter, and this is kind of dangerous, This is kind of bad. Because the effects don't quite work. Now, if you can see, if you watch the helicopter sequence where Rick is on the passenger side with the professor who's flying off in it, it's actually the dummy that we first saw in the episode The Odd Couple. Mm-hmm. Now, this time he's dressed as Rick, not as Captain Marvel. It's clearly the dummy, and it had to have been the same one they used in the prior episode, wearing the Captain Marvel costume. Now, with the DVD, you can look at it closely. It's obviously the dummy. The arms are flapping. Hope they didn't pay him scale, right?
Right. But, Marvel flies towards the chopper, in some really bad, it's ropey blue screen effect there.
Not bad, Ranji, but I think it's time to end this little game.
But I do got to say, he forces the helicopter down, and when we cut to him touching down on the ground, I thought that whole sequence there was pretty solid.
Yeah, it looked okay.
Yeah.
Not bad. Now, this helicopter looked different than the one that was used in the episode of The Boy Who Said No from season 1.
And that, Ranji, is the way I do it.
I remember in episode 0 of our podcast, I had made mention of this episode. And we'll get to the stunts in a moment, but this is not a stunt. This is just CGI, very bad CGI. And I remember we commented on it, and it just looked bad. Paul K. Bisson, who was a part of the episode 0, our premiere podcast episode, said that was really bad.
Yeah.
It was just bad special effects on that.
Yep, it was. But, as I say, when it comes to the ending, the landing there was solid. Now, meanwhile, Ranji now is like, having the Sam and his companion dancing around, sort of running about as he's got like these smoke bombs. They go running off, and Isis stops them by surrounding them with multiple images of herself. And again, I gotta say, it works here. For 70s television, the multiple images of her, the way they managed to stop on cue as she appears. And I know that's all in post, but they could have been off, and you still would have accepted it. And when I say off, I mean like Isis's image might not have lined up exactly with where they were running and stopping with. It was well done, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was well done also. Yeah. We can take it for granted that special effects are in every kind of show and what have you. But for the time, on a kid's show, the kids' show budget, they did a pretty good job with this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Now,
I just done something similar before in a prior episode, as I recall.
Right. Yeah. No, she did. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And wrapping up this act here, the kids are complimented. I know this is going to sound corny. They're given their blessing in a way by Isis and Captain Marvel because the two comment about what a great team they make.
Yep. And you can tell that this is obviously the setup for the spinoff.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yep. Exactly.
It's almost like, remember the Star Trek episode where Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock go back in time and meet Gary 7? Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yep.
And as the episode ends, they are given the clue that they've looked ahead and they see that Mr. 7's in for a lot of adventures. That was meant to be a spinoff. Yeah. Assignment Earth was meant to be a spinoff to a idea that Gene Roddenberry had. It didn't work. I personally liked that episode, and that would have been a good spinoff, I thought. Here, the spinoff, Super Sleuths, might have worked for a little while. I think they would have run out of gas soon, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Now, we do get a nice epilogue, though.
You should be proud of yourselves. You were very brave today, and also law-abiding.
Yes, sir, you make quite a team.
Speaking of teams, you weren't too bad yourselves.
Of sorts.
Yeah. It is. It's a decent epilogue for what it is. Ranji performs again with Rennie Carroll while performing magic tricks and illusions. And we go back to that question, John. Are they really illusions?
Yes.
Now, Rick tells Andrea about the 12 Isises that were there, and she feigns disbelief. And the song that Ranji's performing is the same one he started off with, You Gotta Believe.
Yep.
And he does a very good job. He's got good rhythm. He's got the magic handkerchiefs and what have you. How they're able to sing this without microphone equipment is kind of hard to do. I mean, they have to project their voices really well.
Well, he has magic.
Yeah, he does. He does throw his voice. We saw that happen in the last episode. So, anyhow, at the very end, we see Andrea Thomas breaking the fourth wall for the last time. Mm-hmm. She looks at the camera and says, "You gotta believe," as she winks a la George Reeves from The Adventures of Superman. And we all have to know that that's who they were copying, was George Reeves.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That was right out of, Super. But then again, Shazam, Captain Marvel, many of the whole thing there with the flat board, when he's doing the flying shots against the blue screen, or, even the takeoffs and the landings were just the way they did it in the old Superman TV show and the Superman serials.
Yes, that's true.
So it makes sense that they would even take that little nod as well. Although, it's interesting, I don't think Captain Marvel ever does that in the show. He never breaks the fourth wall.
No, he does not.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only time that they would do something close to that, and it's not really breaking the fourth wall, is when they come back and do the moral at the very end.
Right.
By then, you're out of the story.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Now, I said this before in the last episode. There's just elements of this that just remind me of the 1971 Filmation animated series Mission Magic. You've got, Ranji, who's got the magic, whereas you've got a teacher in the cartoon who's a magical being. But Ranji also plays music, and we've got Rick Springfield in Mission Magic, and even the song "You Gotta Believe," The theme song for Mission Magic is Do you believe in magic? Because the magic shines through when you believe. So it's like, there's just so many elements of this thing that just sort of, mind you, it's a lot more fantastical because they travel through time and everything. But still, I just feel like there's just certain elements of this taken. And then, of course, I also said Ranji reminds me of Guru from Fantastic Voyage. Yeah.
No. I wonder if they did copy that Filmation, and I think we mentioned this already. Filmation is not 100% original. They might have borrowed a few ideas. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Maybe. I mean, it's an idea they've used before, and it worked then, and they figure maybe, we could introduce it again. The only thing you knew they'd be ripping it off if ever Ranji made some sort of hand gesture in the sense of something mystical. I mean, yeah, there's obviously hand gestures as he's doing certain magic tricks. That's part of the trick itself. But if he had like Guru had, where Guru would wave his hand across the screen, and that was the way he always activated his powers. And I'm just going to call them powers. His main thing was like telekinesis. That was his big thing, was he was able to just move objects and such. But then also there were times like he created illusions. He did the multiplying Guru like Isis did here in this episode. He did that one episode where there were like multiple images of him. So
why couldn't Lindsay Wagner multiply herself in bionic?
Oh, Richard.
Hey, a guy can dream, can he? Oh, be still my beating heart. No, I like The Secrets of Isis, but it's missing Lindsay Wagner.
It's missing Lindsay. Well, you could make the argument the Bionic Woman is missing Joanna Cameron.
Well, that's true, but Lindsay Wagner is the greatest action heroine in the entire world. Changed my mind.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure there's plenty of Linda Carter fans who'll argue that one with you, too.
Oh, I know. We all have our favorites, but...
Now, speaking of action and heroes and such, what about the stunts in this episode?
The dummy did all the stunts. I mean, the prior season 2 of Shazam, he wore the costume of Captain Marvel flying on the back of that airplane. In this episode, he's on a helicopter.
Yeah.
He's dressed as Rick Mason.
Yeah, but you got to give John Davies some credit for the landing of the helicopter. I mean, he's hanging from it. It's operating. The blades are going and everything. That's not right. Exactly, And again, it's not like, like $6 Million Man a lot of times where, especially in the early seasons. The later seasons, not so much because we're finishing up the 4th season right now on OSI Files, and we're noticing Lee's doing more of the stunts. We're not seeing Vince Dedrick as much in his really bad hairpiece they put on him to try and make him look like Lee. Oh man. But this, it's like, there's John, landing that copter. He's hanging from it as it's coming down, and then he stays with it, bringing it all the way down, crouching down so he doesn't get his head cut off. That's a stunt.
Oh, I suppose so.
Anytime you want to replicate that and tell me it's not that big of a deal and it doesn't count, I know the man who owns the Batcopter, so we could try that.
And that's something else the show was missing, a cameo from the Batcopter.
There you go. Now, okay, so stunts we got out of the way. What about the fashions?
Yes. More 70s delights. I mean, there is this reeks of 70s. It always did. There's no question about it. Some stick out a little bit more than others. I think that the clothes that Joanna Cameron wore could fit into our time. Those are timeless clothes. They're not really 70s, I think of. But then again, you had an interesting observation, and I brought it up earlier about CJ, who wore he wore the what do you call? Oh, I used to wear those years ago.
the coveralls, the overalls, the suspenders.
Look like bib overalls to me.
All right, but see, here's the question I got to ask. And, a few weeks ago, we did Year of the Dragon, and we talked about Chinese stereotypes. Is this another stereotype that ISIS exploited, where every Asian character has to wear some sort of overalls?
No, I don't think there was. I really do believe that's coincidence.
Okay.
We see Cindy Lee wear the overalls, which it's just a strange outfit to wear in Southern California.
Right.
I mean, if you wear stuff like that in Los Angeles, you find yourself beat up, okay?
So you never wore overalls?
No, about 50 years ago I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I really did. 50 years ago, I said, I'm not wearing that garbage again. I didn't like them. I didn't like them. But no, I think that he wore them well. I just think it's a weird fashion choice. Mm-hmm. And he's wearing them while he's kicking in this door using kung fu. Yes. It just is a weird choice. Why couldn't they just give him ordinary pants to wear? I think that if we were to do some research on it, you'd find that many people did wear bib overalls like they were from a farm, and they wore them commonly, even in cities. I think it was something that it was a fad, but it is a little weird as they would put the characters in these outfits.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with you there.
We will return to ISIS after these messages.
200 years ago, his country was founded. He's an American, but he's forced to live in a slum. Many of us are better off. That's why the God we worship expects us to help one another. Join with others at your church or synagogue and make this world better. Welcome God to America's bicentennial. Practice what you pray.
Saturday's Hot Ones. Dynamite Adventure, Arc 2, followed by Clue Club, starting this fall on CBS Saturdays.
In the news, helping young people with their health problems. This healthcare center on Long Island specializes in treating and counseling young people. This special kind of healthcare is in the news.
Sponsored by
Kellogg's, because your best day starts with breakfast.
Lego my new Eggo strawberry flavored waffle.
Lego your what?
Lego my new Eggo strawberry flavored waffle.
Did you say strawberry?
Uh-huh.
No, you didn't say Lego my Eggo regular waffle. Or my Eggo blueberry waffle, did you?
Uh-uh.
Oh, delicious Eggo waffles just like homemade with that great strawberry taste.
Did you say strawberry?
Lego my Eggo.
Start your good breakfast with new Eggo strawberry waffles and regular or blueberry flavor, too.
From Kellogg's.
Young people between the ages of 12 and 19 have outgrown their pediatricians, but they often have special health problems. Now, some medical experts believe adolescents need doctors specially trained to treat their problems. On Long Island in New York, medical specialists have set up a healthcare center that is only for young people. Although the atmosphere is informal, the medical care is first-rate. Joyce Ann Shapiro is a typical patient. She has been a diabetic for 9 years. After her doctor takes her medical history and tests her, she is given some advice. She's told to watch her diet and restrict the amount of sugar she eats. After that, she talks to the clinic's psychologist. Young people often feel they are alone with their problems. But when they come to a clinic like this one, they see others with similar problems.
Instead of going to a regular doctor, he has from like little kids to teenagers. Right here, they have just adolescents. And like I think after all adolescents, they know what like everybody's about. Everybody around here is like really friendly. You get to talk and meet new people.
Once a week, the entire team meets to discuss certain patients, their treatment, and their progress.
At which time we decided.
There are only about 100 clinics like this one throughout the United States, but more and more doctors are realizing the need for this kind of care. Medical care for young people is in the news.
Easy Does It with Frankie Avalon. Lots of music and laughter. Easy Does It, new this summer.
Premiering Wednesday night on CBS.
Bumper shoes from Child Life. Take them off? Never. Well, almost never. And these are crickets, great for school or play. But don't wear them to ballet. You'll go far in your Child Life hikers. But this is going a little too far. Spiders will help you score lots of points. Up to a point. And there's a free spinaroo for you at your local Child Life dealers, including
The Shoe Closet at Redbird Mall, Town East, Valley View, and Plymouth Park in Irving.
And now, back to ISIS.
Okay, so as we've been doing through much of this second season of ISIS, we've been struggling with the morals because we don't have them available. What are you thinking of in terms of what's the moral for this?
What is the moral? You gotta believe, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess you got to believe, or, you got to believe in yourself. I don't know.
I don't believe in that crap.
Or maybe something to do with the professor, and, you can't let jealousy get in the way of, something, something good. Because look what happened. I mean, we had this weather control device, and the professor messes it all up at the end. Because he was upset that they didn't go. And this was something I didn't comment on either episode here. What I love about the professor is that, Sam and his partner who steal it are like, okay, well, we got you the device. We could, experiment. We could try this. We could do that. He's like, no. I don't want to do the legwork. He doesn't want to do any of the work. He wants Rick. He wants the plans. He just wants, give me this right now, because he wants to get to moving on with his plans. He doesn't have the patience and it's almost childlike in a way. Like, I don't want to be bothered to learn, which is ironic for a professor.
Yeah, that's true. But hey, that's. Have you met a millennial lately? Okay. Okay, moving on from that.
Moving on. Well, here we go for the final time here, as we've been doing since the very beginning. With what was it? The Lights of Mystery Mountain was the first episode, right? No, it wasn't the Lights of Mystery Mountain. What was the first one of ISIS? Why am I blanking?
Because you're not looking at the cheat sheet.
I'm not looking. I'm not looking at the cheat sheet. You're right. I'm going to look at it right now, and I'm going to do this. I was right. It was The Lights of Mystery Mountain. Fool's Deer was second. That's because I was like going, wasn't the junkyard? But no. And I even remember we had talked about how Cindy Lee changes from being, strong and confident to being almost childlike in the second episode when she gets herself stuck in the junkyard. Yeah.
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
Now, with the theme of this episode apparently being you gotta believe, that's the moral. Why couldn't we believe that ISIS could bring back Lucky?
Oh, you're never going to let that one go, huh?
No, I'm not going to let that go. I say to my Mego action figure every week, why didn't you save Lucky?
Now, see, now you know what you got to do, though. You got to find like a toy version of Lucky to stand beside ISIS. Looking up at her, with the look in his eyes going, why?
Again, Lindsay Wagner could save Max the dog. She ran off with Max, too.
No, I love doing that when you've got something like that. I have several of the Mattel Batman 3-inch, nearly 4-inch figures, including the Mr. Freeze figures for Eli Wallach. I have his one, and I was like, you know what this needs? It needs a seal next to him. So I found a little toy seal like he has in the episode named Isolde, and I put the seal next to him. They stand next to each other on my display of the figures. You need to get Lucky for ISIS.
No. Oh man, I probably should. but have a little word balloon taped to its head. Why didn't you save me?
Oh man. But as I'm so, go ahead.
My mental health issues will be reported to HR in the morning.
Oh man, if they weren't reported a long time ago, Richard, it's too late now. We've had our moments on this podcast where HR should have been reported.
Oh god. Yeah. Hey, what do you expect? We were kids watching two shows where they wore really tight, colorful clothes, and the superhero was wearing a miniskirt flying around, giving chants.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, so I started to say, as we've been doing since the very beginning, we rank these episodes, whether it was Shazam was 1 to 5 holy molies. Here on The Secrets of ISIS, we do 1 to 5 tuts. Now, Richard, where do you stand on... and now you don't. I was about to say you got to believe, and now you don't. Where do you rate this on a scale of 1 to 5 tuts?
Well, I actually liked it. I would give it 4 out of 5 tuts. I thought it was a good send-off to the series. It was a fine series finale. It could have been just a bit better, and I kind of wondered, thinking about this, there was 22 episodes of The Secrets of ISIS. There were 3 crossover episodes with Shazam. So we've seen Andrea Thomas and ISIS about 25 times total. And those 25 times have left a big impression on a lot of kids who watched the show to this very day. They thought it was a fun show, and this was a good send-off. I don't know if the show would have continued. Again, they would have run out of ideas. I think it would have been just rehashing everything. And that's kind of what happened to Shazam also. After a while, you start to run out of ideas. Same happened with even well-funded shows in primetime. Mm-hmm. They would run out of ideas after a few seasons, and you've seen it all before, and it comes a point when the show has to come to an end. And I think that it went out on a high note, in my view. I think it went out pretty high. I think it could have been a bit better. It's not bad. I'm borderline 4 out of 5, almost 5 tuts. It wasn't a perfect episode, I don't think, but it was a good send-off. The new characters were given some attention to possibly launch into their own show, which didn't happen, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view. I thought it was a suitable end, and we see Captain Marvel for the very last time, and we see Isis for the very last time, and we're never going to see them in those forms ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the reason why I had to go 5 out of 5 tuts on this one, because this is the last time. This is the ending. But I also felt that this second part worked better for me in terms of story flow, in terms of line delivery, in terms, for the most part, the special effects. I also feel, oddly enough, because when it came, I'm coming back to $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman again. When it came to the end of both series, before they got into reunion movies in the 80s and 90s, fans generally tend to believe that $6 Million Man went out quietly. It was just done, and off he went. And in fact, actually, probably one of the most boring adventures he ever did, The Moving Mountain. But Bionic Woman got an ending. That would, if it had ended like that and we didn't get the reunion movies, that would have been at least fine. There was something to it that gave it a sort of sense of finale to it in the episode On the Run. Here, with And Now You Don't, I still feel, despite the fact that, it still ends kind of on the happy and everything just seems like we could go on to the next episode, there did still seem to be something final about this. And maybe it's because they used it as the backdoor pilot to set things up. Like, you just felt like, okay, we'll move on now to the next. And who knows? Maybe the Super Sleuths could have had Isis guest star, since we've already established it in the same universe. We could have had Isis guest star, probably not Shazam, because by then the contracts, the deals with Filmation would have been gone. But as we find out, Captain Marvel does return to Filmation a few years later in animated form.
Isis obviously comes back in animated form herself.
Right.
Captain Marvel comes back in animated form a few years later. So we would see the characters in some form, but in this form, this was it. This was the last time. Yeah, I think for what it is, it's actually very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Now, Richard, you put together, just for those possibly, because I found this, that when I do these podcasts, there are those who are diehard fans who love the show and then follow the podcast because they love the show. But then there are some people who actually listen to the podcast because they just like the way we talk, you and I, or myself and my other hosts on other podcasts that I do, and they've actually never even watched an episode of the show. There are those people out there, oddly enough. And you put together a sort of little thing here of like where everybody is at in terms of our main cast for both shows today. So what do we got for Isis?
Well, for the Secrets of Isis, here's what we've been able to track down, and it's pretty easy to find out. Now, today, Joanna Cameron works at an exclusive resort hotel in Hawaii. For a time, she had been a nurse, and when I spoke with her, she was still in the nursing profession from years ago. And she's out of the acting business, and she was actually known for making documentaries and appearing in a lot of TV commercials, and she had a notable appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And for other superhero fans, Joanna Cameron appeared on the Spider-Man TV show around 1978.
Premiering Wednesday, The Amazing Spider-Man. Nicholas Hammond and guest Joanna Cameron, star of Isis, race to locate a deadly plutonium bomb and the ruthless Mr. White, who would destroy the world. Don't miss The Amazing Spider-Man. Wednesday at 8, 7 Central and Mountain. Next Wednesday on CBS.
Now, Brian Cutler, we've had him as a guest on the podcast. He teaches acting out in California. And Joanna Pang Atkins, who played Cindy Lee in the first season, works in the performing arts. She teaches music and world dance to children and teens on the East Coast. And Ronaldo Douglas Lombardo is a renowned singer, singing for many Southern California churches. And for Shazam, we never covered this much when we left off with Shazam and the 28 episodes that were filmed over a period of 3 years. John Davey appeared as Captain Marvel starting in Season 2 and with 3 ISIS crossovers. He also co-starred with Joanna Cameron in public service announcements. There was only one public service announcement for a reading promotion that has survived.
Hi, kids. Most of you know me as a person with very special powers. Well, power isn't really so mysterious. famous philosopher once said, knowledge is power. And where do you get knowledge? Well, from a lot of places. But mostly, I'd say, from reading. It's all been written down. All you have to do is read it. Why am I saying all this? To get you to read, and not just for yourself, but to read for the need of others. You know what's happening now? The MS Readathon. MS stands for multiple sclerosis. There's no cure yet. But by reading books, by joining the MS Readathon, you can help find the cure. And win prizes, too. To learn how, ask your teacher or call your local chapter of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. Thanks.
I remember seeing these public service announcements, but they've long since disappeared. So he played Captain Marvel in those public service announcements and a few with Joanna Cameron. He appeared in numerous television shows. I remember seeing him once in an episode of the Rockford Files. He ended up doing about a half a dozen Rockford Files, which are now easily available for anyone who has Netflix or Amazon Prime. You can find him very simply on IMDb and to see the episodes he appeared in. I saw him in one episode of the Rockford Files years and years ago, about 30 years ago. I saw him, and I immediately recognized him, and that was before checking out IMDb and whatnot. So he appeared in the movie The Long Goodbye, and he appeared in Deal of the Century. And he was in a number of pictures, mostly playing very small cameo appearances. When I first met him, he was a realtor north of Sacramento, California, and he's long since retired. He appears with Michael Gray on the autograph circuit. So Michael, who's been a guest on our podcast a couple of times, he ran the Casabella Florist shop on Santa Monica Boulevard. For many years, he ran that shop with his wife. And I was a customer of theirs some 25 years ago when I first met up with him. I used to buy some flowers and plants and things when he had that. And he loves to tell that Ozzy Osbourne was one of his customers. He worked in retail also, and he had a few acting gigs. But more recently, he's enjoyed a recent resurgence in his career with appearances on the animated show Archer.
Yes, I feel like I was very clear on that. Our progress will be tracked in real time on a 3D map of the human body.
Oh my God, Slim Goodbody. No, this is absolutely not that trademark character. This is...
Michael? Oh my God.
Just a unitard with the systems of the human body on it. On a guy.
And a guy named TV's Michael Gray.
Damn guy.
Earballs! Jesus!
I see I have some fans in the audience.
Are you kidding?
Are you?
Lana, it's TV's Michael Gray. Billy Batson from the Shazam ISIS Hour?
Well, and the Brian Keith Show.
Obviously in the Brian Keith Show.
Who is Brian Keith?
Now you're just trying to piss me off.
And he does autograph shows. And, of course, as I mentioned, he does those shows with John Davey. Les Tremayne, who passed on in 2004, who played Mentor, was always known primarily as a voice actor and a character actor. As a matter of fact, he was one of the 3 recognizable voices in the 1940s. And he was a celebrity known for his work in radio. He's a member of the Radio Hall of Fame. He was very proud of that. He told me that he was awarded that. And he also loved to talk about how he had been a sculptor on Mount Rushmore at one point.
Wow.
And he had many Hollywood stories to tell. He told me that it was Teddy Roosevelt, not Roosevelt. And he loved to talk about even the cameo appearances he did in motion pictures like North by Northwest with Cary Grant, and how Alfred Hitchcock directed his scenes. And he loved doing Shazam, and he mentioned Shazam. It wasn't the high point of his career, but he was proud of the show and proud of doing the show. Jackson Bostwick, who was the first Captain Marvel, the best filmation appearance of Captain Marvel, the one who started the whole thing, he basically helped make the show what it was because of the crossover from the comic book and how the writers needed to do their research a lot better, and how he had the appearance and the look of Captain Marvel and how he could introduce Captain Marvel sayings like holy moly into the scripts and having his personality. He's done many autograph shows, appeared in a number of independent movies, and he has a movie in the pipeline that hasn't been released yet. Looking forward to seeing that. And also he's still working on his autobiography, and he does autograph shows. And so we had done a couple of them together. I would help him out a little bit, and I was with him in New York City for one of his autograph shows, and I was with him in Idaho for another autograph show that I just helped play a small part in setting up with him. But anyhow, those are the cast of the Shazam ISIS shows. These shows were fun, and I hope that in our podcast we've done a very important contribution. Maybe it's small. Time will have to tell. But we've contributed to keeping the memory of the shows alive.
I hope so, too. I mean, as I mentioned, there are people who have, written to us. There are people who have commented on our Facebook page for the Shazam ISIS podcast or in the various Shazam and ISIS groups that are on Facebook and such and have commented. One person in particular, Tom Williams, I wanted to give him a shout out. He has been a staunch, I would say, advocate for getting new episodes out. And as you know, we've had our snags in getting new episodes out over time at certain times and such. Tom would always either write me or on one of my other shows, in particular the OSI Files, which is a Facebook Live show, he'd be in the comments, when is Shazam coming back? When are you doing a new ISIS episode? So, Tom, thank you for your friendship there and your encouragement to get these episodes out. But there's another person in particular. We did ask a few episodes back to send us your thoughts on the ending of the series and the podcast and such. And this gentleman is a friend of mine on Facebook, and we became friends through the podcast here by the name of Robert Gillis. And he writes to us, "Hi, John and Richard. For the final Shazam ISIS podcast, you asked if we listeners might like to contribute a few words. Here are mine. First, thank you both for creating this entertaining and wonderful look back at those two shows, Shazam and ISIS. When Shazam and ISIS first aired, I was a very lonely child who did well in school and was bullied for years because of it. I remember 5th through 8th grade with so much sadness. Sure, I had my sister and parents and Nana, but I lived in a lot of fear of bullies. So I would often escape to fantasy worlds of Superman comics, TV shows, and then along came Shazam and ISIS, and my life changed for the better. Then and now I understand that these are actors on a TV show. I get it. But there was part of me that saw them as friends. Billy and Mentor and Cap helping wayward kids, and ISIS, Rick, and Cindy helping students each week. Rick, Andrea, and Cindy were the teachers we all wanted, the ones who would stick up for us and guide us when we went astray. Listening to those cassette tapes of the show for years always cheered me up, and I was even more elated to get letters and pictures from Joanna Cameron when I wrote her. I still have those letters from her. In high school and beyond, life got better as I met new friends and became happy. Today I'm married and my life is pretty good. Maybe my moral would be, it gets better. Don't worry, life gets better. Back in 2004, I had the opportunity to meet Joanna Cameron, and we had a great talk and thanked her for being such a role model and making a difference. To see Joanna in person and actually have the opportunity to speak with her one-on-one, for me, still has a dreamlike quality. She is such a wonderful role model, such a gifted person, such a giving, kind woman, and my hero. I know that Joanna Cameron is just a person, an actor in a TV show, but she was always such a special part of my childhood and such a wonderful role model. To finally meet her, give her a hug, and talk to her, well, it's just a dream come true. I admire her for her philosophy of taking care of people. She did that as a fictional character on a TV show and gave lessons and morality tales. As a hospice nurse, she provided one-on-one care to dying people and gave them love and dignity. And now at her hotels, she helps people to learn to relax and relieve their stress. What an inspiration. Sometimes our role models disappoint us when we meet them or get to know them better. Meeting mine was just the opposite. 30 years after ISIS, I admire and respect Joanna Cameron more than ever for all she's done and continues to do. And of course, there's still that 11-year-old in me that gets to say, oh my God, I met ISIS. I met ISIS. To Joanna Cameron, to Joanna Pang Atkins, Brian Cutler, Michael Gray, John Davey, Jackson Boswick, and the late Les Tremaine, thank you for being role models and making such a difference to a shy little boy all those years ago. The man who writes those words learned a lot from your TV shows and still cherishes them and all of you. And finally, thank you again to John and Richard for such a loving and detailed podcast. Sincerely, Robert Gillis.
Oh, that's a wonderful letter, wonderful note. We appreciate his listenership, too, and I hope that for him and for so many others whom this show has meant so much, that this podcast will help keep that memory alive.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about doing this and doing OSI Files, and when I did Batcave, when we were doing the 66 series and such, and I'm doing now with the Super Friends podcast I have, is that I love hearing about how people either connect with other fans, which is one thing I see, or how it's like, well, I watched the episode and then I listened to your discussion and I never thought of it this way, or wow, you really nailed it here, or sometimes you totally missed the point, Drew. You know, that's also happened too with some of these podcasts, because you also do get those fans who are so in love with the series that the series can do no wrong. Now, Robert's letter, you know, I can tell you, he appreciated when we said what was wrong, and he appreciated what we said was right. And you could tell he has a great love and affection for this show. But, you know, at the same time, he's able to see, and we did it tonight. I mean, there was times we were cracking ourselves up with some of the goofs and things that could have been done better. And we're doing this through 2021 eyes, right? But at the same time, yes, we do it all with love. I mean, you know, like you said, Richard, you've had this great opportunity to get to know, you know, pretty much all of the cast. I mean, I think the only one, Ronaldo, have you not met her?
No, I have not.
Okay, so she's probably the only one. Like, she's the only one. You have managed to meet every single other cast member in one capacity or another. You've and beyond that, because you knew less, you met Lou Scheimer, for God's sakes.
Oh, yeah, he bought lunch for me, too. He picked up the tab.
Nice. You know, that is a very special, you know, so when we do what we do, and when we say something, you know, okay, maybe sometimes we could have maybe been a little lighter on it, or maybe we were being too harsh, but at the same time, it's all done out of love, and it's not the kind of thing that we turn around and go, geez, what a waste of time that was, because I don't feel like we ever wasted our time discussing this. I've been really glad, you know, to share this journey with you, and I appreciate it when I asked you, you know, God, it's like 5 years ago when I said, hey, do you want to do this? After we did that one episode, which we made our 0 episode here of the Chronic Rift, but we made it our 0 one when we got to interview Jackson. And afterwards, shortly after that, I was like, hey, you want to do this and let's go through the series like we're doing with Cyborgs with 6 Mil? And you were like, yeah, I'm on. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your patience with me, you know, because there were times where it's like, yeah, whether it was work or, you know, what have you, just held me back from getting this done. And I appreciate your understanding with that. And I appreciate your friendship as we've talked through these episodes.
Yeah, and it's been very fun. I think that it's very important that we keep, in my view now, some people may not agree with us in what we're doing, but I think it's important to keep these types of things alive because it is art. Think of all of the stories, the art that would have been done hundreds of years ago that would have been good and memorable in some way that's been long lost. And it would have had a profound impact on people had they had a chance to hear it or to see it or to read it. And for something like Shazam and Isis, it's art in a small way that had a strong impact on people now who are adults. And maybe it's an exaggeration to say they got their morals from watching the Shazam Isis Hour, but they learned something that was a fun way to learn, and they were inspired by the heroics of the heroes. And looking at it now in hindsight, it takes them back to a simpler time when they were kids. And it causes us to introspectively ask the question, why did we like it so much? Mm-hmm. Why do we like things that we saw as kids? And why do we carry the memories of that into adulthood? Do we look at it retrospectively and say, oh, that was awful, I can't believe I like that? Or do we look at it and say, yeah, there was something good about it, and I see why I liked it, and I still like it to today? And I hope that, again, we've managed to keep that memory alive for people so they can look at the things that they're probably having their children watch and see what kind of impact it'll have on them 35, 40, 50 years into their futures.
you say, why do I like this? And you're right. That's part of the celebration, is to explain why I like it. That's why I did Batcave, because it was like, I saw a lot of people downplaying the 66 series. Oh my God, it's trash. It nearly ruined Batman, as a character and stuff, because it wasn't gritty and all this. And I've been reading through many of the old comics, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Batman 66, all it did was magnify just how goofy the comics were. It's only after the 66 TV series that DC Comics finally got their acts together and refocused the character and made him a little darker, made him a little more straight-edged and such. Before that, he was just as silly as the TV show.
That's true. In fact, I thought about that myself. I thought about the criticisms of the Batman TV show, and there were some criticism that really are not well placed, because comic books were not taken seriously. The producer thought they were juvenile,
right,
and couldn't figure out why people liked them in the first place. At the same time, the Batman stories, the comic books, were going down the tubes, and they came very close, the story goes, of going out of print, because they were not as popular as they were. The kids who read them grew up, and superheroes were not in vogue anymore. And then when it became a TV series, the stories, the comics increased in their sales and brought the popularity of the character back. Now, once that wore off after a few years, true Batman aficionados wanted the character to go back to his darker origins, and they often forget, even though they were embarrassed by the Adam West TV show, they often forget that in the 1960s, the comic coincided, before the TV show came out, it was very juvenile, funny, and silly and quirky, in part because the comics code had to tone it down.
Right.
And so the TV series only made it more popular, and when people thought of Batman, of course they thought of the TV show. It was in the popular consciousness. But the same goes for Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, the TV show, the Shazam TV show, it was a way to bring the 1973 revival of the character in DC Comics to life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a dead character for 20-plus years. It was gone out of consciousness for the most part, and no one thought we would ever see the character again. And there were fans of Shazam who tuned into the TV show because they were fans of the comic book. And they may not have liked it as much as the comics in the memory of their childhoods when they saw it, but that helped to bring Captain Marvel, it certainly did for me, into a new generation. I started to like the comic book before I saw the TV show. I knew that the TV show was coming in fall of '74, but the advertisements for it were in the summer. And so imagine my surprise when I saw Shazam on the newsstands at the local thrifty store, a comic book, a 100-pager, and I had my dad get it for me. And I liked the character in the comic immediately. And then the TV show came on, and I liked it even more. So in a way, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. How did I like Captain Marvel? It wasn't through the TV show necessarily. It was through the advertisements for the show that led me to the comic. And in the case for ISIS, I liked ISIS because it was obviously a spin-off show of Shazam. Right. So right. I really love both of those shows. They were fun.
Mm-hmm. But I say all that because, I've seen podcasts. I've seen Batman podcasts, 66 Batman. And I'm like, why are you doing this? You clearly don't like the show. I mean, there's nothing but I wouldn't say anger, but just derision at the show. Why are you doing this? I have never done a podcast. I've never done because I don't see the point if we can't celebrate it. But at the same time, you got to be realistic. You'll never see me do a Chips podcast. I will promise you that right now, because I tried watching that. I watched it religiously as a kid. I can tell you right now, I'll save you right now. Here's the Chips podcast. It's a mini. Here's your spinoff within this episode. Here's the Chips podcast. I don't know what the heck I was seeing in that show when I was a kid. I watched a few minutes of it and I was like, this is awful. The end. Thanks for listening, folks. There's the Chips podcast. Just like we had a backdoor pilot, this is the backdoor pilot for the Chips podcast. We're done. But that's the whole point of it. And so if at any time you've listened to the show and, maybe you were like upset by something Richard or I said, or any of my other shows, understand, I love these shows. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love these shows. But at the same time, I also know that nothing is ever that perfect. I may have said this on this podcast. I know I've said it before on others. There's a man by the name of Thomas DJ. He's hosted a series of podcasts over the years. One of the most famous ones of his, the one that I love and still miss to this day, is called Better in the Dark. Thomas always said, it is one thing to love your characters and your TV shows and your books and your movies. It's another thing to love them to the point where you are so blind that you can't see when something is wrong. Because I'm seeing it now with OSI Files. We're bracing ourselves because we're coming up on the 5th season of $6 Million Man. And oh my God, is it going to be awful? Because really, there's very little in the 5th season worth really watching. They put the show out of its misery at that point. You know, there was no, we need to keep this going. And I'm getting it now because I've been trying to tout that. But honest to God, watching through them, it's like, no, this is bad. And you have to, but I've had people already going, you better go easy on the 5th season because it's $6 Million Man. And it's like, that's not going to happen. We'll celebrate when the show does well. There are things on that season I do like. I'm looking forward to talking about the episode Just a Matter of Time. It's probably one of not my favorites of the 5th season, but overall the entire series, I love that episode. But at the same time, we also have to deal with the 2-part Sharks episode, which is god-awful.
Oh, I thought Sharks was okay. But I just saw it last year. I have not watched the 5th season as much, obviously. I have all of them, but I haven't watched that episode where they're on that island where the people morph into those troglodytes.
I love that one, and there are plenty of people who don't. I love that one.
That when you say 5th season, that's what I think of. Ironically, you like that episode. I can't stand it.
The Lost Island, it's called.
Gosh!
And you want to talk about you said earlier on you remembered when you watched Now You See It and Now You Don't. You remember sitting down and watching it for the first time. I remember sitting down and watching The Lost Island, being so excited and not thinking for a moment, whoa, wait a minute, because we just had The Return of Death Probe Part 2 on Sunday night, and then we had Lost Island on Monday night. I was so thrilled. I'm like, yay, 2 days of $6 Million Man. And then it was like Sunday night rolls around again, and I'm like, whoa, wait. That was permanent. We're going to do 6 mil on Monday nights. This is dumb. You know, then I was upset because I liked my show on Sunday nights, not Monday. Of course, then I didn't have to worry. It was only a few weeks later, and then the show was canceled. So, the things we remember as kids, you know, the things we remember. That's it's amazing. True. You know,
that's very true. Oh, but I don't know. Is it a distortion of our memories or what? Hey, there's people out there who don't like the Shazam ISIS Hour who love Tommy Wiseau's The Room. It's horrible. It's one of the worst, awful pieces of garbage ever put on screen, and people love it.
Yeah.
It's like Troll 2. It makes Troll 2 look like Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, well, you know.
Now, all the people listening to this podcast, I know we got a diverse audience out there. If you know what I'm talking about when I say Tommy Wiseau's The Room, you know exactly what I mean and how awful it is. So don't you criticize us for loving Shazam and ISIS, okay?
But see, then you may have people who do love that too. You know, and that's the whole thing. It's, you know, Paul always said this when we were doing Cyborgs, because there were times he and I butted heads over what was quality and what was not. I am not a fan of the hugely fan favorite Day of the Robot. I think it is really lackluster, and I think the only thing it's got going for it is an 8-minute fight with the robot at the very end. But, you know, Paul, his childhood, he holds on to that, and it's dear to his heart, and he loves it. And there's plenty of other people who do. But see, that's why, and Paul said this once, he says, that's why you've got different flavors of ice cream. Some people like vanilla, some people like chocolate. You can enjoy your flavor without screwing around with everybody else and telling. And that's one thing. I've never, like, you know, I've never said you were wrong when you said something that I didn't agree with. And you've never said I was wrong. We've always respected each other's opinions. If ever we were at odds at any of it, including our ratings, There have been times where, I've been harsh on a show, you've been a little more lenient, and then there was one or two times you were harsh on a show, and I was a lot more lenient, including this episode here where I gave it the 5 and you went with the 4. It's going to happen. It doesn't mean you're wrong, and it doesn't mean I'm right, or vice versa. It just means here's our opinion, and this is what, and then you take from it what you will as you walk away from it. You could think we're jerks.
Well, exactly. Now, people have said that art is subjective. That's not entirely accurate. Art can be a matter of personal taste. That's true. Mm-hmm. But objectively, there are some things that are better than others. Come on, listening to someone play classical piano who knows the chords is far better than listening to a 4-year-old slam his fingers on it, okay? There's an obvious quality difference.
Okay. I will give you that. Yeah. But, now
I will gladly see the Shazam ISIS hour over and over and over again before I'll ever see Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. So if you want something to really divide fan bases out there, you throw that out there and you will have people fighting on opposite sides.
Yeah, there you go.
Love, hate. There's no in between. Love or hate. There's no in between. But for the worst episodes of Shazam and ISIS, I'll gladly watch that. I will watch the $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman reruns before I'll watch almost anything put out today. I like the stories better. And I believe that the stories that have been told that you can put together in fiction, you can tell lots of different stories. But the basic stories have already been told. And I think that these older television shows now have told those stories, and I think they do a better job than having them done today. Now, others will disagree with that assessment, and they'll say that modern filmmaking, modern television production does it better than the way it was done in the past. That might be true, and I might be looking at it through the lens of nostalgia, but I still maintain that some storytelling that was done on these old television shows that we love to talk about so much have simply done it better than what contemporary art has done.
I agree with you. I mean, we've talked about this before. What if you updated Shazam as, say, a CW show? And we've talked about how Billy would be reporting from the RV. He'd have his computer, his laptop there. And quite possibly, even if we did morals at the end, which I seriously doubt they would do today. No. But if you did, perhaps the moral would be more embedded in Billy's report back to the studio, and as he's talking and stuff and he works things through, the moral would go out that way. ISIS, all right, now Andrea's, she's still the teacher and all that, but, now we've got better technology. Now we've got better special effects. I mean, yeah, that's the easy part, but also just the technology in the school. And like you said, we don't have cell phones. Now we do. So now we've got to find other ways around that, because that was the other thing too. Think about it. You couldn't take as many shortcuts because you didn't have the technology to do it to work into the story. Now you do. Now we don't have to go and examine the research base like the boys did in Now You See It. Instead, let's get a hold of the camera footage. Okay, how are we going to do that? We're going to tap into their computers there and
their computers and download it to a thumb drive or something.
Right, exactly. And then we'll go watch it later and go, wow, that really does look like Mr. Mason, though. Zoom in on this. What just fell out of his pocket? Zoop. Now we just got to sneak in and get that vial. Okay, now we got all that. We just did a whole bunch of shortcutting there. Think about it.
Yeah. And if anything, old stories, they had to be resourceful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had to be resourceful. Nowadays, technology cuts a lot of the story out in many respects, because if you don't do it, then people are going to be, you mean he doesn't have a cell phone? He doesn't have why didn't he just use his cell phone and call the proper authorities?
Exactly. But Mentor did use the cell phone to call the proper authorities.
True. Yeah. The possibilities. Someday I would still love to see, a final, even if it's an audio drama, I would love to see an actual final Shazam story where Billy and Mentor get back to the city and we settle things there.
It would be really neat though if some person, I don't think there's a market for it, but someone would come along and do an animated movie just like that was done for Adam West and Burt Ward when they did their 2 Batman.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be so? I wonder, well, you say there wouldn't be a market, but I also am just thinking, how would you go? I guess it would just be I guess like with the Batman movie, it would just be a Warner Brothers production, because who owns, that's the thing, Batman 66 was tough to do because on the one hand, Batman is Warner Brothers, it's DC Comics, but then there were elements that were uniquely the 66 series and owned by the folks who produced it. That was William Dozier's estate and all those others who had a little piece of that pie there. So, if you wanted to include Joan Collins' Siren, Warner Brothers couldn't just go and do it. They had to get the rights somehow. The Batmobile itself, the design of that Batmobile is not DC owned. They actually get the rights for that from whoever owns the thing. So the same thing, Mentor, the RV, those elements from Shazam would have to somehow, unless Warner Brothers gets them all back by, because now Filmation is dissolved,
Well, I think Warner Brothers probably owns that lock, stock, and barrel because they were able to play and digitally remaster Shazam and put it on their DC universe and release the Blu-rays. I think they do own it.
Well, then you know what? Then there's no excuse. I mean, other than, okay, you say a market, I bet you, considering all the nostalgia, if they were smart, they went and they redid the TV show into... making it Blu-ray and cleaning it up and everything. They put it through that process. For God's sakes, a Saturday morning, TV show, they did that. How about this? Before the next Shazam movie comes out, bam, straight to market, Shazam, bang. Billy Batson, you get Michael Gray, he comes back and does the voice. You get Jackson, because Jackson still sounds like Jackson.
He does.
He does.
I would love him to come back as Captain Marvel.
He's not like poor Adam West. Adam West, you could hear it. Jackson could pull it off. And you got to do it before it's too late.
Oh, absolutely. He could pull it off. But the character of Mentor, I don't know if you've ever seen the DC shorts out there.
I've seen
where Mentor is not Uncle Dudley like it was in the comic, but now he's Mr. Tawny.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he's wearing the bush jacket, and they even have the open road RV.
Mm-hmm. But I've got your Mentor voice. I know who could play Mentor if you did an animated feature. Garen Barry, who was the voice of the Alex 7000 in the Bionic Woman Doomsday's Tomorrow. That Garen Barry could nail Les Tremaine. Easy.
Amazing.
I could see it.
I think it would be fun to see that again. We would see maybe Billy and Mentor and Captain Marvel do things that were not possible in live action, but we can fantasize about this. Is anybody out there willing to do this? I really liked the animated Batman with Adam West, Burt Ward, and they brought William Shatner on to play Two-Face.
Yep.
I really enjoyed those. Those were fun.
Yep. I know a couple of people who worked on the Batman movie. We had them on for Batcave. I'll send them in a little email and go, hey, is this ever a possibility? I'll ask them. Doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they can say is what? No. Right? Mm-hmm. You never know because who knows? And then you just float the idea out there. Just give them some, and then say, and then run with it, Because like you said, how awesome would that be?
It would be terrific.
And Michael's been doing voice work. So, because he's been doing the stuff for Archer.
Yeah. And he'd jump at it in a moment's notice. He would.
I know he would. I'm just saying, though, he's got the training to do it. Mm-hmm. He's got the training to do it because he's been doing it for Archer now.
Exactly. And you could do all sorts of strange things with such a concept. You can have an explanation for how Captain Marvel looks so different from season 1 to season 2. I remember the funny scene where Batman gets clobbered on the head and he sees 3 different cat women all over his temple.
Yep.
Eartha Kitt and Julie Newmar and Lee Merriweather. That was great. Something like that could be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. All right. Now you got. Tomorrow morning. It's late now as we're finishing this up here. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna send an email out to one of the animators that I've had on the podcast, and I'll put it to him and just like I said, hey, how about this? And all you got to do is send me and Richard a free copy of the DVD. So it's yours. Enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Well, anybody with a computer who has some talent could make this up on their own. It would not be official, but I think Cracked Magazine does a great job of these kinds of things. They do parodies of licensed superheroes all the time, and it's under fair use.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I would love to do it if I had the time and the talent to do that, but I don't know if anybody out there is willing to do that. We'd love to see some more animated things involving our classic Shazam cast from 50 years ago. That would be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Well, Richard, that's going to bring us to this end of the Shazam ISIS podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It brings it to an end, and I hope that all of our listeners have enjoyed this journey along the way, observing what we were doing with each episode, and that this would inspire you to go back and look at the episodes yourself, compare them with what we critiqued in our podcast, and make your own decisions as to whether or not this is something you want to preserve for future memory.
Exactly. Yep. Now, some people have asked me about a continuation of the show. Here's the thing. The show's not going anywhere in terms of you being able to access it. The website will continue to stay up there because it's got material up there, including Donald Glut was so kind after his interview with us to send us a series of pictures. There is that album of pictures he took from the brain during the shooting and such that we share on the website. All the episodes are there and some other little things. So, it's all going to stay up there. Now, in terms of the show itself, will we be doing anything regularly? No. But if, we have not yet interviewed Joanna Cameron. We've not interviewed yet John Davey. We've not yet interviewed Ronaldo Douglas. And there's also a bunch of people that we've been trying to get as far as some of the guest stars in the past and just haven't been able to nail it down. If those come along, those episodes will show up in your feed. For that matter, Richard and I are still talking about, we won't do it an episode by episode thing, but we would like to spend some time talking about the Shazam animated filmation series and the ISIS, with the Super 7, Secret 7. I forget what they called it. There's a few of those on YouTube, and Richard and I have got to figure out what we're going to do with that. So, it's not entirely goodbye, turn off all the lights, we're done. But the RV has pulled up in front of Wiz, and we're all getting out, and we're going to go upstairs into the Wiz building, and we're going to see what's going on here. I ask that you folks please take a moment when you get a chance to head on over to your podcast provider and leave us a review. Let us know you're out there. Let us know you've enjoyed this, what we did right, what we did wrong. Include that in the review, good and bad. So this way we know going forward. And if there's anything in particular you do want to see, possibly as a future episode that we're missing out on here, let us know. Maybe we can do something about that. But for now, until the next time we do meet, this is your mentor saying thank you so much for listening, folks. Once again, Richard, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.